Filibuster here. Go ahead, you're on.
Yeah. So under stream now, nothing's coming up.
You're on, dude.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
I don't believe you.
It says live in the corner of my screen. And you've now popped up in the chat.
Wow. So, oh, okay. I go back to, yeah, we're still trying to figure things out. We're technical difficulties. So there was an option to view event. So do I click this link? Is that what I do?
Mute yourself.
Oh, there we go. All righty, there we go. Technical difficulties as usual. Oh my gosh, I don't believe it.
We've all done
right,
that.
so let's find out if we're actually everyone can hear. So, Al Red Sox fan, what's going on, my friend? Thanks for coming by. Stratomedic Delaware, Bobby. Hey, can everyone hear us? Okay, go ahead and talk there, Ron.
Hey, Bobby and Chris and Al and Bubba, how are you? There's going to be about a 10-15 second delay. Yep,
Yeah,
you're good.
Loud and clear. Beautiful. D. Scott Howard, thank you. All righty. Thanks, everyone, for showing up for our first live stream here where we get to chat and interview and talk with some of our YouTube friends out there. I put out a video, what was it, Saturday or Sunday, talking about the fact that we have a real nice YouTube community, that we enjoy one another's company, and we enjoy what we do on one another's gaming channels, or whatever you do on your YouTube channel. But we don't really know much about the person because they're usually playing their game, playing their sporting event, or doing their interviews or talks or whatever they are doing on their channel, and they don't actually get to sit down and actually talk to them. So I thought, what a great idea. Maybe we could just sit down one-on-one, have a little conversation with people in our YouTube community and just get to find out more about them. So I am very pleased to have our very first special guest, Retro Sports Network, Mr. Ron Juckett. Thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it that you would step up to the plate and be the first participant in our quick talk with ID Jester.
Oh, I have no problem playing the guinea pig, and I like to talk, so the combination works out rather well.
Yes, it does. And I knew he would because for those of you who are unfamiliar or don't realize it, we had some D&D sessions going on, and one of our players had to drop out, and Ron stepped up to the plate for that as well to become our D&D guinea pig. So a big thank you for him for that as well. So I don't know Ron maybe for the last 6 months or year or so, and I've watched lots of his stuff on his channel, but now I want to really find out about Ron, talk to him about him, what he likes, what he enjoys, uh, what his passions are, what his interests are, maybe even some weird questions that we're going to throw out there. So I appreciate everyone that came out so far. Bobby and Baseball Demos is here. Bubba Husky, Stratomedic Delaware, Al Red Sox fan. Al, why haven't you signed up for your session yet? So let's talk about that real quick before we get into our interview with Ron. Number one, tomorrow night, 9 p.m., we have CP himself, Clinton Parks, is going to be interview number 2. Expect lots of shenanigans tomorrow night, 9 p.m., Clinton Parks. So be sure to come by for that as well. We have David from Baseball Demos, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Great, wonderful baseball guy, very knowledgeable, and we're going to get to sit down and talk to him about a lot of different things. Probably talk a little bit about baseball, and even so, if you're a baseball fan, be sure to stop in and listen to that. He's very knowledgeable in that. So Clinton Parks tomorrow night, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Baseball demos Saturday, 3 p.m. And then we do have Stratomatic Delaware. He's not coming up until February 11th. Time to be determined, but we'll catch you up on that. If you are part of our YouTube community and you have not signed up for your interview time yet, and there's many of you out there that haven't, there is where you need to go. idgesterlive@gmail.com. I made this 3D image for you so you can send me an email, idgesterlive@gmail.com, so we can schedule a date and a time. And then when it's your turn,
show that to Al one more time, okay?
Al, Red Sox fan. I don't know where he's been. idgesterlive@gmail.com. Okay? Al, Clinton Parks, you're tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Be sure to be here. And Todd, thanks for coming by. I appreciate it as well. All right, so
I'm looking forward to seeing Clinton. He watches my games on mute, but I think he's at work, so I don't think it's intentional. But I'm looking forward to that.
well, I'll tell you, Clinton, there's, between Clinton, Al, and myself, we have a lot of teasing and going on, and a lot of interaction when they have their games on, just because of who they like, what teams they play, and there's just a lot of teasing going on. But I'll tell you what, between Al and Clinton Parks, I was running a game yesterday from 1990, and I was looking for the closer for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And so I was going through all the cards looking for it. And before I even found it, Clinton Parks typed in the chat who it was. And I was just amazed at the extensive knowledge that he has. So I'm really looking forward to putting that old mind to work tomorrow night at 9 p.m. and getting to talk with him face to face. So we'll talk about Clinton tomorrow. Just one more time, Clinton Parks tomorrow, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Then baseball demos, 3 p.m. Saturday, Stratomatic Delaware coming up February 11th. All right, so there's your clues in and when you should be here. Let's talk to Mr. Ron Juggis. So first question I have for you, Ron. How'd you come up with a cool name like Retro Sports Network? Because I really like that name. So
I really don't remember. I had started the channel just before I was hired and fan-sided to write, and so it just kind of made sense. There was, I think I knew Al at that point, and I had done some games on a channel of my own name, but didn't want to clutter that because there's family and stuff watching that, and they don't want to see me calling games from 19 whatever. And so I just came up with the second one. It's like, well, it's all older sports. Let's just call it Retro Sports Network.
Well, I love that name. I think it symbolizes what you do really well on your channel, first of all. So it kind of just matches everything. But it's one of those names that brings in some intrigue. Like, what is this channel? I mean, if I didn't know you and I didn't know our community and I didn't know anything, and I was just typing in and your Retro Sports Network popped up, I'd be like, and I'd have to click it and find out what's going on there.
Well, it's not, I don't have clips from ESPN from 1980, so we're not going to have any old Aussie rules football or NASCAR from that era. But, between, doing some replays and then doing some one-offs and explaining them, I did one with Merkel's Boner. Someone had asked for that. That's what we do, talk about old sports.
So when you talk retro, like, is that 1990 and before, or is that 1980 and before? What would you consider retro?
Well, I think you and I are right around 50 years old, so I think the primary focus of the channel is our teenage years. So really anything from 70, I just finished the 1978 NFL season, so 78 to 93, I think would be the heart of where it is, but hey, if it's history, even if I wanted to replay the Australian Open finals from last week in tennis, that's a retro event. Might be recent retro, but so if it's over, it's fair game. And I've done a couple of pre-plays as well. I did the Alabama Clemson pre-play for the national championship, which went nothing like the actual game itself. And you've already yelled at me for who won my Super Bowl pre-play. So
yes, I did. So yeah, I was actually going to lead into my next question for you, because you're Retro Sports Network, but you still do current events.
I want to open up what I do to as many people as possible. Because if you get stuck in what you and I would consider our glory years, then you never get to be past 16 years old. I mean, we have these games and have all this data that goes with them. And so why not pre-play a Super Bowl? You're going to draw an interest. And if you like what I do, then maybe you're going to like what I do on a regular basis. And maybe for those of us who don't necessarily watch a lot of modern sports, okay, I know how this game is played. Let's play a current game and see how that goes, and see just how badly I do with it.
I see. You also do. I noticed. I was watching. I just caught the end of your live stream when you did soccer. You do basketball, college basketball. I've seen on your channel. I've seen lots of variety of different sports on your
I've done
channel.
9 sports. Soccer was my 9th.
Soccer was your 9th.
Soccer was my 9th.
Which one do you find the hardest to broadcast out?
Basketball.
Because of the
lack of visuals.
Oh, the lack of visuals
in the game engine, and you got to do a radio call, and you're dependent on the play-by-play, and there's just very little to see. So the Super Bowl pre-play was difficult because there was no animation there. And you see your numbers on the screen. You know how many people you have watching at any given time, and you want to be entertaining, and you want to get out of the way of the event. But it's also very frustrating when there's nothing for people to see. This is a visual medium.
Correct.
But so if you to the opposite question, what are my favorite games to do? Well, baseball is my favorite sport. I could do baseball till the cows come home. If all I ever did again was baseball, that would be fine. And football is not I liked football a lot as a kid. And no, Al, I'm not in my 30s. It's been a long time since I was in my 30s. Football is, I don't watch as much football as I did, let's say 15, 20 years ago, but the way that the software presents itself made for a very visual broadcast. And I got into that through the repetition. I did 48 games in that replay online. We did at least one game from each week of the season. And the last week, because of winning in games, I did 6. I did 6 in 5 days.
That was the 1978 season?
78, and we ended up with the real Super Bowl and the real Super Bowl winner.
I saw that it was Dallas and Pittsburgh in the 78 championship game. And now you're currently doing the 82 football season, correct?
Baseball season.
Oh, baseball. That's right, baseball season. Right. That's what I meant to say.
Put that up to a vote and was curious on what people would choose. I say you nominate whatever season you want. And someone would ask, well, what's in your wheelhouse? And I was honest, I'm an 80s kid. But if someone had wanted to see 1954, then we would have done if that's what people wanted to see. I mean, you want to make content that people want to watch. But I was pleasantly surprised it was 1982, and I'm loving it. It's great.
And you do that at lunchtime normally?
I do 2 games a week at lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays. People actually requested it because I wasn't quite sure after the football season whether I would do another lunchtime replay. But people will listen while they eat or have it on while they work, like Clinton watches without the sound. Really, I'm not that bad of an announcer. And I do a Wednesday night game. So it's 3 games. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 day games and a night game.
And I'm really glad you mentioned that, because when I listen to your commentations of your sports games. If I close my eyes, you have that announcer voice. You sound like you're actually at the game and actually like a TV or radio announcer. So, is it just natural you do this, or have you modeled the way you do things after a certain person, or is it just that's just you and that's just natural, or how did that come out to be?
I do a very poor imitation of Vince Scully. Uh, no, I wanted to be an announcer. Obviously I have physical issues, and I was never going to be able to play anything. And so I paid attention to how games were covered and broadcast, and a lot of them on the radio. Growing up in New England, we got Ken Coleman and Joe Castiglione on the Red Sox games. You remember when Castiglione was doing the Indians games on television back in the early '80s, and Bob Murphy and Gary Thorne with the Mets. You would listen at night, and so Bob was very specific that he was painting a word picture for you. And baseball is just slow enough that you can do that. Traveling is not something I really enjoy, and accessibility in broadcast booths and all that other stuff just made it impossible. And so, yeah, I mean, as a 14, 15-year-old kid, I talked all over Pat Summerall and John Madden and called the games myself. So, yes, it's by design, and it's kind of funny now that I'm pushing 50 that I've found this niche of calling games that are fake. I mean, they really happened, but they didn't happen in the way that you see them.
I find it very amazing, and you kind of remind me, not specifically the voice, but Keith Jackson. And what I always thought really, I love Keith Jackson. I absolutely adored the way he did college football. But what he ended up doing was he always, he had a just a neutral tone to himself, except for when the big moment happened. And you kind of emulate that to me. It's like you always have this just calm demeanor, just you're going about your business, and then when the play happens, you emphasize it and announce it just beautifully done. And so that's why you remind me of Keith Jackson. And I don't know if you see any similarities between you and him, but that's how I kind of view when you're doing your games.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I spent a lot of Saturday afternoons as a kid watching Keith Jackson, and he was enunciate and get the hell out of the way. And that's really what I tried to do, is that, yes, you would inject your own personality into things, but people aren't there to listen to me ramble on about whatever. They're there for the game. And if you go back and watch all the interviews with Kurt Gowdy, it's about the game. I mean, yes, we have a good time and we shine through and have a good time together. But yeah, and Jackson actually was not a bad baseball announcer. Didn't like the sport. He did not like the sport, but he could call a good baseball game. And so, yeah, it's Scully and Jackson could have read the phone book to me, and I would have bought it, downloaded it, and listened to it in my sleep.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe listening to all those games as we grew up, if not just subconsciously, maybe some of that snuck in as we're doing some of our stuff now. But I definitely see it in you, as opposed to some of the other simmers out there. And I think also it's like you could never, if you go back and watch all these games that he broadcast, you could never tell what team he rooted for at all, because he never showed any favoritism. He never showed any kind of, he wouldn't get excited when his team was winning. So I have no idea who Keith Jackson ever rooted for, because he was always the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of let a little looser in the baseball because everyone knows I'm a Red Sox fan. And if you're a Red Sox fan from the area, you didn't like the Yankees. But, today I had a Yankee game. I had a Reggie Jackson's first game back at Yankee Stadium. And, I poke on people and called Bucky Dent Lord Voldemort and all those sort of things. But, I try to play my broadcast very fairly because I know that there are fans from both teams watching. One of the nice things, and let me give Al, Red Sox fan, full credit for this. He's the one that encouraged me to start doing these live. I would never have done them live. I would tape them at night when I had the chance, when there was nothing else to go on, upload it. He says, no, you need to do these live. And so blame or thank him, whatever way you feel.
Definitely thank him for that.
And so, it's that extra interaction during the game that makes it all the more worthwhile for me. For football, like I said, I will, if I'm calling a game, I try not to, root for anybody because I want you guys to be entertained. If I always play the home team in the baseball replay. So I was playing the Yankees today. I don't want them to lose. I think that's part of the getting older process is that you have less of a dog in the hunt as you get older when you play them. I want the games to be close. I don't want 9-0 or 42-0. I want them right down to I don't know what's going to happen type deals. But it's all about being fun and entertaining. And it was for this football season. I knew a lot of Patriot fans were watching, so you try to cater to them a little bit, but I found it very curious that Pittsburgh won that championship. Like I said, I wasn't hurt either way. The only time I felt disappointed is when Pittsburgh beat New England because I knew a lot of the people watching wanted the Patriots to go to that championship game. But beyond that, it's all about having fun and spending time with people.
So, do you have favorite teams? Are you willing to share that with us?
Sure. I'm for football. When I watch, I root for the New York Giants. I grew up a Bengals fan. They had the decade from hell. And baseball, I'm a Red Sox fan. We've had a very good last 15 years. But when I did professional work as far as covering baseball teams, I did not want to cover the Red Sox. I had the opportunity to. And in fact, for one little job, I actually did. I wanted the challenge of having to be objective. And so I worked for Bleacher Report for a while. My first paid job was covering the 2012 World Series, live blogging that. And game one was the one that Pablo Sandoval made a crap load of money taking Justin Verlander deep 3 times. And when I worked with Fansided, I wrote about the Washington Nationals. So yeah, I feel deepest about the Red Sox and have an irrational hatred for Ohio State and Notre Dame.
Well, as most of you know, I'm a St. Louis fan. And I hear you got an interesting story that talks about the St. Louis Cardinals. So I'd love to hear it. Entertain me.
Okay. And Clinton, I'm not. I was just ragging on you about listening to me on mute or watching my games on mute. Don't take that personally. My uncle grew up in Vermont, where I am. Grew up a Cardinal fan because when he was in high school in the early 40s, they would win the National League an awful lot, and he skipped school to actually go down to New York to watch a World Series game. We won't tell his mother that. She's been dead since 1980, so I guess it doesn't matter. So his love for the Cardinals is very deep. And so the first game I went to was actually a New York Mets St. Louis Cardinal game in the summer of 1977. I was 5. I had the chicken pox. We walked around Manhattan all day, and it was about 3 weeks after the Mets traded Seaver. So there were 13,000 very upset people at Shea Stadium, but I saw Lou Brock steal a base. And so he's the one that really drilled into me that love of the sport and that commitment in the history and all that. And then I, found games on the radio and such, but he's the one that made it okay to be a little kid and to embrace that.
Oh, that's a great story to hear. That's awesome. Let me just check in the chat real quick and just welcome anyone that has popped in. Todd B, I don't know if I mentioned Todd B is here as well. Clinton Parks, Al Red Sox fan, of course. Baseball Demos has stopped in, and he mentioned that Keith Jackson could broadcast Tiddlywinks and make it sound interesting. I totally agree with that.
Acapulco cliff diving. Do you remember when he did that?
I remember that. I remember Acapulco cliff diving. MP Fox is here as well. Thank you. D. Scott Howard. Bobby is here. Let's see if I missed anybody. I think that seems to be everyone. But if I missed your name, apologize. We're gonna have. I'm gonna be doing the interview. We're probably gonna go. Till 9 o'clock or maybe a little bit after or whatever. But the last 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to just open it up for you guys in the chat if you're still here and we haven't bored you guys to death. And if anyone out there has any questions they want to ask of Ron. So last about 10, 15 minutes, we'll get any participation from the audience to see if there's anything that they want to ask.
You've got me as long as you want me. We started late too, so.
Yep. I understand. You're always so helpful. I do appreciate that. So big debate, and I've mentioned this several times. I don't know if I've ever discussed it with you, but I've always ascertained that the Red Sox winning the World Series was actually a bad thing for baseball.
It was a great thing for me.
And as a Boston fan, and I think this is how me and Al and Clinton Parks kind of got into, our shenanigans and all this and the fun teasing back and forth is because they obviously are Boston fans and they kind of disagree with what I'm saying. But if you look at the root of it, if you go back, there's all kinds of specials that were created on TV about the fact that the Red Sox have been so unlucky and, the curse of the Bambino. If you go into YouTube and type that up, there was actually like 2 different TV series they produced.
I can't talk about my feelings towards Dan Shaughnessy in public because swear words come out. That was just a load of, for a lack of a better word, malarkey. The whole curse of the Bambino and all that.
And how?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. And I think the fact, yes, as a Boston fan, when your team doesn't win, it hurts, and it's not good for you personally. Okay, but in the big picture, the big scheme of things, when Boston won the World Series, it took all that extra specialness that baseball had that no other sport had away from it.
I see where you're going with that. I really think that kind of all fell when the dreaded Cubs won in 16. My wife actually came in and watched them clinch against the Dodgers because none of us had ever seen it in that. But then again, I think teams that don't win championships, that comes down to how your teams are run and not because someone milked a billy goat or sold Babe Ruth to make no net. I can now listen to T for Two and not cry anymore. I see where you're getting with that. And I would agree to an extent because you can definitely tell when someone became a Red Sox fan on just a basic conversation with them. If they sat through the times where your throat, your heart was ripped out through your throat, I mean, to still watch games and wonder, well, how are they going to blow this? Remember seeing their Game 7 of that Yankees series going 9-2 or whatever it was. How are we blowing this one? Because that's what happened to us growing up.
Yeah, but see, the answer you're giving me, Ron, is from a Boston fan perspective.
But I can understand that baseball has, because baseball has a history fetish that none of the other sports have, that yes, once that diamond fell, No one cared the next year when the White Sox won the World Series. They had gone 85 years. Because of the way that the Cubs had built themselves as lovable losers instead of just a bad team. When they finally got serious and hired Theo Epstein and Joe Madden, look, they won a World Series. Gosh, I was not shocked.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because Chicago's World Series came after Boston.
Both of them did, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Boston broke the ice first. Can you imagine if Boston hadn't won any World Series and then all of a sudden the Cubs are in the World Series? That's what I'm talking about. That's why it's bad for baseball because if Boston would have never won a World Series, okay, let's just say Boston going into 2016, Boston never won a World Series. When the Cubs finally made the World Series, everybody on the planet would be talking about it. Everybody on the planet would be watching these games. When 2016 came, only Cub fans cared. That's the only people that cared anymore. You took all those other people out of baseball. And that's why I'm saying it's the fact that they won, and it doesn't have anything to go against Boston, Chicago. Okay.
Right.
But it's got to do with the big picture of the history, the intrigue, just the desire that people have to whether they're going to watch this or they're not going to watch this. If there's intrigue because Chicago hasn't won in 108 years and they're going to finally do it, everybody was going to pay attention. But then because Boston had broken the streak, it's like, oh, Chicago, they're going to break the streak too. And
I hear where you're going with that. And baseball is A, regional, and B, parochial. And so when imagine you're in Ohio, imagine, I saw in the chat, imagine if Terry Francona pulls it for the Indians, finally. They haven't won since 48. They beat the Boston Braves, as a matter of fact. What's going to happen that time, especially after LeBron left and the way that the Browns are. I think what happened to Boston the last 20 years has been bad for sports. Period. You want to go with that. You want to go, Tom Brady's playing in his 9th Super Bowl on Sunday. 9.
I totally agree. That has not been good for football. I used to be 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I was a football nut. Since about 2010, I've maybe watched 2 or 3 games a year. And I don't even plan on watching the Super Bowl this year because I have no interest in watching either one of those teams play.
And I think a lot of people feel like that. And I think to your larger point, I don't know exactly how old you are. I'm 47. I'll watch baseball because I love it. But it's 51? Hell, just say it out loud.
52.
52. Okay. So we're around, we're all within that same 5 years range of each other. I might watch a game 7 of an NBA final. I like hockey, but unless my team is playing well, I really don't watch. I haven't watched a full hockey game this year. I'm not really interested in modern sports. And if you go to the sports message boards and those of us who game and who can recreate whatever it is that we want to recreate, none of us are really interested in what the product is on television. It's so different from what we are used to. And it's brutal to watch a football game. 5 minutes of commercials. You get a touchdown. You got to review the touchdown to make sure that every part of the correct anatomy is touching in the right places. Then you get 3 minutes of commercials. Then you get a kickoff, and then you get another 3 minutes of commercials. Who wants to sit through that?
Yep. And I brought this up because I'm doing a 1990 NLCS replay between the Pirates and the Reds. And the reason I'm doing the replay is because I went back and was watching the games from 1990. And when you watch those games, the games flow so much better and faster because there's not every other play where you got to stop and have a review, or there was plays that the runner was out that they called safe. There was plays where the runner was safe when he was called out. I mean, but it wasn't like this dramatic, we have to do something about this atmosphere like there is now. Like every time they're going to probably institute some rule next year because of what happened to the Saints about, well, they're going to be able to, review a pass interference play now.
Oh my God, that was so blatant though. And if you
It's true, but so now everyone's up in arms about it. So now they're going to have to make some kind of rule change to accommodate all the, to pacify everyone.
I know for me, for football, when we started doing regular games on Thursday night and we stretched it into a 4-day week, I, grew up with you. First game started at 1, big game started at 4, unless you lived in a market where the team sucked and you couldn't get the late game, or you were stuck with your team in the late game. And your day was done at 7 o'clock. And is your homework done? Go do your homework. You're supposed to go do your homework, And so by 7:30, you were done watching football for the day. You knew everything that had happened because Bob Costas and Brent Musburger told you about it. Now, for it's all designed for. I don't care how many points Tom Brady has rolled up for your fantasy team. Did they win the game or not? Really, it just. I guess in this case, I'm old. Also, I think because we create content for different sports, we know how much fluff there is in a given game. I did those football games in an hour and 30, and an hour and 40, and that's holding a full chat with people just like you and I are doing now, interacting with people. I get a baseball game in 57, 58 minutes, and that's with me yapping and doing scores and looking over at the chat and going, oh yeah, that, because there's some good stuff that comes out of that. And it's just, you're right. It's all about the flow. And in football, it's broken. And in baseball, it's pretty close to broken.
Yeah, baseball is getting more, what's the word I want to use? Integrated with society's not motive, but society's persona versus the millennial generation and the gotta have it now, gotta be on my phone. I call, never text, never talk to anybody on the phone, right, and all that. And now because of all that, kind of I see all the sports kind of bending that way and trying to, if you back in just say 6 years ago when the scores scrolled on the bottom, you would get just the scores of the game and it'd be on there for like 2 minutes and gone. Now they give you the scores, they give you the quarterbacks, every stat that he did, and then the running backs and the wide receivers, because it's all about, playing for the fantasy points. And so everyone wants to know how many fantasy points they're getting and everything.
Yeah. I did.
I don't know anybody my age, say 50 or up, that does fantasy football. There might be a few of them. I think that's a younger generation thing. And so now I have to actually, okay, let's see. I want to see who won today. I got to sit in front of the TV for 10 minutes before my team score comes up. It's crazy.
Right. No, it is. It is. I completely agree with you. I just, the only good thing is that these people will be nostalgic for players as they get older. And so games like Action PC and Strat and the inside sports games that you play, I think that the market will always be there for that sort of gaming, because they may not be nostalgic for the 1982 Cardinals or the 2004 Red Sox or whatever that we are, because of what they meant to us, but they are going to be, for their specific players. Was Tom Brady really that good? That sort of thing.
Okay, let's let's take a break. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to take a 5-minute commercial break. We'll be back in 5. No, I'm just kidding.
You gonna get Phil Simms on to explain how to do a pass? You see, Jim, I don't know what's going on.
So 2018 baseball season,
Yeah.
obviously a very good season for Boston. Kind of didn't start off that way because the Yankees got off to a pretty good start, and they were challenging for quite a while there. It looked like it was going to be neck and neck, but then Boston, kind of dominated there. And then I I don't know if I mentioned it during my live streams or whatever. It just happened to be. I said there is no way Boston is going to lose at all. Did you have any feeling that Boston was going to lose this? I mean, once they made the playoffs and first division.
This was because I had finished working for the Nationals. The last couple of Red Sox years I've kind of half paid attention to because you get, life happens to you when you're busy making other plans. And so I knew that they were scoring runs left and right. And there were some god-awful teams in the American League this year. And so it was hard to tell going in whether or not they were truly that good or the American League was that crappy. And I didn't think they'd get past Houston, but they destroyed the Yankees. They went 7-1 on the road. The only road game they lost was that 18-inning game in the World Series to the Dodgers. So, yeah, I think that they proved that they weren't a fluke, but if you had asked me in October that question, we were starting to do the Dungeons and Dragons stuff. No, that bullpen wasn't very good. They could score 7, but outside of Sale and Price, you got to get games to Craig Kimbrell. And who would have thought it'd be Kimbrell would be the one that would be the question mark in the playoffs? But
Well, that's true. I as soon as the playoffs started, I was like, it's over. I didn't know about the National League. I kind of figured the Dodgers were going to do it, but I wasn't for sure. I was kind of him hawing around. Milwaukee, maybe no. It was kind of give or take who was going to win the National League. But I was like, and I drive home. I get off work at 4:30, so I drive home and I listen to MLB channel. And usually between 4:30 and 5, which is when I'm on the road. Last year, they do their top 5 teams in the league type breakdown every Friday or whatever day it was. And it was always 4 teams from the American League, which was Boston, Houston, Cleveland, and the Yankees. And then like 1 team from the National League. And I was like, if they're putting all their eggs, their top 4 teams in Boston, New York, Houston, and Cleveland, and I said 2 of those teams going to have to play one another. So Boston only needs to beat like 2 of those 3 teams, and I don't know, because the schedules or whatever. I didn't think that Boston was. I kind of knew that Boston was going to win this. I would have, if I was a betting man, I'd have put money on Boston because I had a feeling that Boston was going to just dominate, and I didn't have any worries. I mean, I was pretty convinced they were going to win pretty hands down.
I thought they would beat the Yankees because the Yankees didn't have much starting pitching. And the problem now going in for any team in the playoffs is you get nothing from your starters and your bullpen's exhausted. By the time that we get to the latter stages of the LCS and the World Series, your bullpen has nothing left to offer. So I knew that they could beat the Yankees. The Nationals and Astros trained together in West Palm Beach. And so the last 2 years, I saw quite a few Astro games and knew that team was just fantastic. It was the Astros I was worried about. And I was surprised that they went. One of our D&D sessions was a night that David Price, of all people, shut them out for 6 innings. That was the night that they clinched. I was like, where's this coming from? Maybe they believed. I mean, all the magical things happened for Boston in the end, and I'm delighted. Absolutely delighted.
What would you say is your biggest surprises from the 2018 season? I have 2 of them, and I'll mention them after you're done.
How poorly the Nationals played, because I know how good that team is. They should have won a World Series by now. They are that good. The privilege of watching Max Scherzer pitch every 5 days It was only matched by Pedro in 2000, Gooden in 85, Guidry in 78. Those special pitchers that go above and beyond. I suppose Braves fans who watch Greg Maddux every day, every fifth day for those 4 or 5 years when you could shut out a team on 74 pitches. So that would be one. And I'm really surprised that the Dodgers haven't won the whole damn thing yet. I mean, they have so much money. I mean, and they got Machado at the deadline. I forgot what they gave up for him, a bucket of warm spit and some MacGyver gum, I think. But yeah, how disappointing the Nationals are. I guess those would be the two things, because I've spent the last 3 seasons pretty much paying attention to the National League.
Yeah, I'm a National League guy myself. Loving the Cardinals. I think to answer your to go on and kind of pile on what you were saying about the Dodgers. If you think about it, the Dodgers, you're right. They should have won something by now because they have been so close for so long. 2013, they played the Cardinals. And if it wasn't for 8 runs in the 7th inning in game number 2, they probably would have won that series. 2014, they played the Cardinals. I mean, they have had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to get to the World Series, and now that they finally made it there, they just haven't been able to go over the hump. What do you think? Do you see anything, or do you have any thoughts on how are they going to finally manage to get over that final hump?
I think the National League Central gets better and better every year. I have a hard time saying that. I think the Dodgers window is closing. First of all, because Clayton Kershaw can't stay healthy anymore. And second of all, they keep trading their good, Walker Buehler is going to be a hell of a pitcher. How long he stays in Los Angeles is another question, because the Dodgers are going to, make the mistake that all teams that try to overextend do, try to win now and have to get rid of people, their best prospects to do that. Plus, the American League is really good. Boston is. We'll see what we get out of Boston. Houston didn't, outside of Keuchel, they didn't lose anybody. Cleveland, if they can stay enthused, could do it. And the Yankees are good. So there's no clear path for anybody. And you're going to get another surprise like Atlanta or Philadelphia, depending on who Philadelphia signs. Whoever gets there is not going to have an easy way. And I think the Dodgers' best chance was in 2017.
I agree.
When Houston took them to 7 games. And so it just gets, and also the thing is, same for football, once you play all those extra games and put all those extra miles on those arms, at some point you tire out. I think that's what happened to the Cubs at the end of this year. I mean, to lose 2 games at Wrigley Field that would have advanced, and their arms are just done.
Yeah. So I'll talk about my 2 surprises for the 2018 season. You can tell me how crazy and stupid I am. But my number 1 surprise actually is my hometown team, the Tampa Bay Rays. The fact that they're a small market team, they traded away just about everyone they could, and yet they were there almost till the very end. They were only 6 to 8 games down through the top of September. Yeah, and, if one of these other teams would have faltered, Tampa Bay could have made it. I was very impressed with Tampa Bay. And, this is my 3rd. Let's see, that was only my 2nd baseball season down here. We didn't move until middle of the baseball season, so 2 full seasons. So I haven't really got much of a chance to delve into. But Tampa Bay, being such a small market team, trading away all their players, they didn't have. I mean, they were basically giving tickets away around here just to get people to go to the games. They hang around. They played. I remember we went to the Yankees game, and Yankees were up. I think it was 4-1. And I got 4 tickets. The other couple had to leave, so we just left with them as a courtesy thing. So I listened to the rest of the game on the way home, and Tampa Bay came back and won that game. That was the game that Sanchez, the catcher, did run out his ground ball. Remember that?
Yes.
And they had the big fiasco afterwards where, they were going to, they questioned, is he okay? Why didn't he do this and all that? That was the Tampa Bay game that the Tampa Bay came back and beat them. And like I said, that was a big surprise for me because, they were, we hear Tampa Bay news every day, and, they didn't give them much chance in the beginning of the season. It got to the All-Star game, and they're only like 4 or 5 games out. And they're like, oh, we'll probably falter, in the second half. We don't have the arms. And just like you said, we don't have the backup players to continue, with our, our current situation. But they stuck around till the very end. So I was very impressed with them.
They are this generation's Montreal Expos.
They are.
Right down to the crappy stadium situation.
Well, they are negotiating to get that new stadium now.
I hope so.
So so Tampa Bay actually doesn't play in Tampa Bay. It plays in St. Petersburg. They're trying to move to actually closer to downtown Tampa Bay, and build a stadium down in there, which I think, they're going to build the stadium, build all the shops and the malls and the food and the restaurants and everything around it, and make it like a big to-do to go to a game. So, maybe that'll.
I hope so.
Yeah. Second thing, or my second surprise for the 2018 season was the Oakland A's. Again, I look at the glass half full. Ron looks at the glass half empty. That going into the season, again, no one thought the A's were going to end up winning their division. They didn't actually win the division. They ended up being the wild card team, but still, small market team without any good pitchers. If you asked me who one of their starting pitchers was, I couldn't even tell you who one of their starting pitchers were, but they could hit the ball, and they have a lot of up and coming players. So for them to stick around and actually get into the playoffs, I'm going to have a live stream or something I did a couple years ago, and I thought it was a great idea. And now that I'm more in the community with you guys, I think it'll be a great idea where we have a night where before the season starts, everyone comes and makes their predictions. And then we keep, at the end of the season, we have another video or, live stream where we talk about, who did best with their predictions. But I can guarantee you, most people, if you'd asked him who was going to be, in the playoffs last year, not many people were picking Oakland.
Exactly. And I think our differing views, because almost incestuous with the Nationals over the last 2 years. But growing up in the shadow of the Yankees, where it was a big market, and there was, you'd be a little kid in the late 70s and early 80s, it was the expectation that the Yankees were going to be in the World Series, and that the Red Sox and Mets played second fiddle to whatever the Yankees did. And the Mets grew up in an awful big hurry. They got smart. They built good teams. They sniffed a lot of coke running up to first base, and then the Red Sox developed a farm system and produced. There's always been a lot of pressure in these big baseball markets, and St. Louis too. Where you are expected to do well. There is no such thing as a 60 and 100 season and that being acceptable, especially now with all the money involved, because the Red Sox are now a big market club. If I told you that before the 1967 season, that Tom Yawkey actively looked at San Diego to relocate the Red Sox to, you would have said, "What are you drinking?" Well, it's Dunkin' iced tea, but that's the God's honest truth. He wanted out of Fenway. How much can change over a generation or two. That the expectations now, and then it goes back to your point about, did the Red Sox winning the World Series ruin baseball? Yeah, we now all play in big market stuff, and second, third, and fourth place is just not tolerable, as opposed to genuine surprises like Tampa and Oakland, and when Kansas City won the World Series a few years ago.
Right, 2015. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what
Against the Mets. Who would have guessed Kansas City Mets before that year? No one.
Not anybody.
Yeah,
Maybe some 7-year-old kids on Long Island in Kansas City, but that's about it.
that's true.
But yeah, I mean that's small ball, small market. Don't strike out 8,000 times, and it wins. Gosh, I'm shocked.
You don't follow hockey much? Is that what you said earlier?
I used to follow. Hockey was the one sport. My mother, God love her, when they would have games on in the 70s, it was the Flyers and the Bruins. And what did they do? They pounded the 11 bejesus out of each other for 3 hours, and they might have scored a couple goals. And so that sport I was not encouraged to watch. I found it in late high school. When I do watch, I do root for the Montreal Canadiens. Someone asked me once years ago, "Do you root for the house in poker too?" Hey, look, but I don't watch a lot of it now. Scoring is down from what I'm used to, and you get into it, and then they're talking another lockout. And that's you finally get into something. We're going to take this away from you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, Tampa Bay Lightning obviously dominating the league this year again.
Yeah, they're very good.
Yeah, they're very, very good. Hockey is kind of baseball is my number one sport. Hockey would be my second favorite, followed by football, then basketball. I'm not a big basketball guy. I can watch some of the college stuff, but the NBA for me is just, it's not real basketball. Those guys like carry the ball 5 steps, and they don't get, they take off from half court to slam dunk it all the time. It's not real. Like when you watch college and they're doing their play and the other guy bumps into the other guy, the refs blow the whistle. Okay. And I can respect that. When I see Michael Jordan pushing off of, what was it, Eli, the Cleveland defender there on him. And then
Mark Elo.
I'm sorry?
Greg Elo. Yeah,
Elo. Greg Elo, right. When I see him push off and then and no whistle, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I can't follow something when they're not going to call a foul or play by the not so much play by the rules, but not let people get away with stuff.
It's not the game that you saw on the playground. I am in awe of Greg Popovich and San Antonio's team first approach, and what they've done up in Golden State. Steph Curry and I'm blanking on the coach.
Oh,
Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr, yes.
I'm in awe of those two teams because they play as a team.
Yeah.
And anytime you play together as a team, it's much more entertaining than 5 All-Stars going off on one. The year that I'm not a huge Detroit Piston fan, but the year they beat the Lakers in the finals with Karl Malone, Detroit played as a 5-man unit.
Yeah.
And so we have a pretty intense basketball program up here at the University of Vermont. We beat Syracuse the year after Syracuse won the national championship. It was not quite 1 versus 16, but yeah, if basketball is played as a team game, I really enjoy it. If it's better. The games I've watched at Christmas were better quality than what I've seen 5 or 6 years ago. But I hear you. Six steps and no travel. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Samsonite luggage for that.
So I know we talked about this off air, and we've emailed back and forth, and you're kind of in the loop. But for the people out there, we've talked about our D&D and upcoming D&D in Stratomatic, Delaware, which is also part of our D&D group, is in the chat as well. And we should be, we talked offline and probably getting it going here in the next couple weeks. We're going to start up again. So as we talked to Ron about this, if you are interested in joining into our D&D game, be sure to send me an email.
Al. You looking, Al?
Hello, over here. idjesterlive@gmail. So yeah, we're trying to get a fourth or a fifth for our game. probably starting in a couple weeks. I'll probably post a video on that. But so you weren't a Dungeons and Dragons player growing up, or
No,
used to it at all, or anything like that.
no.
So that was a whole new experience. So what did you find? Uh, what did you find most enjoyable? Because we kind of talked after the session
Right.
completed, and we kind of just, hey, did you guys have fun and blah blah blah. So what did you enjoy about it? Because you're more of a sports guy, but you got into this Dungeons and Dragons as a newbie, and so just wanted to know what your thoughts were, and kind of hear what you had to say.
A neighbor of mine, as a little kid, as a 10-year-old, he was a little older, offered me the chance to play in 81 or 82. And, I'm not a movie watcher, not really a sci-fi guy. Doctor Who, I'll sit there and laugh at. I've watched some Star Trek. Star Trek I enjoyed. And I did a little bit of Star Wars role playing with my wife. But that was just, we got drunk in the middle of that. So, that's not really the same. And so when the opportunity came to me, when you offered the opportunity, or when I saw it, I was like, do something different. If I don't like it, I don't like it. But we haven't rehearsed this answer, by the way. You came up to me in one of those early games in that replay and said, it might have been before the group had started, or you might have had the first session or whatever, but it certainly wasn't. It came up in conversation without me being in that picture yet. And you said, calling a game is role playing. You're role playing that game. You are controlling the story. You are letting people know what you want to know. And it made a lot of sense that if I can pull this off and people actually want to watch what I do, that why not? I mean, we control the story in the game, but you're the one that, we're also your marionettes as well. You want us to go do something, you're going to try to push us in that direction. Didn't always work out that way. So as someone coming into it as an older person and not a teenager and doing it sober and with very few snacks in between, I loved it. I loved it. I know we didn't achieve what you wanted us to achieve, but I think trying to do that and trying to mesh with people who you don't know on the fly, I thought we got quite good there by the end. And so I was nervous and apprehensive the first time, but I was so excited by the end. I really did enjoy it.
Yeah, if you look at what most people do in our YouTube community, they're basically telling a story about what's going on with somebody that they're controlling, either a baseball card, or if it's electronically, it's an electronic character. And you're basically entertaining people by talking story about what's happening to that character. And I was thinking, wow, I mean, that is basically the essence of role playing. And I bet you if we could get some of our YouTubers together, just random YouTubers from our community, and get them to start playing, I bet you that they would turn out to be very good. We had our first session, and I told you guys exactly how I felt. It was not good. It wasn't. It was. It was kind of learning on the go, which I explained to you guys. It was learning on the go. But I'll tell you what. By that fourth session, what did I tell you guys? I told you guys that was an awesome, awesome session. You guys grew up in just 4 sessions to start actually becoming a D&D role-playing group. And it was just amazing. If you go back and watch these 4 sessions, the progression of where you were to where you ended up being is mountains ahead of where you were. And I was just so proud of you guys.
Thank
I
you.
could not believe it.
I think for me, it was getting comfortable with the character. I had the disadvantage of not creating the character that I played, which when we created the characters for the new session, was a big difference. But once I got to know what was expected and all that, it was just easier to sit there and go, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, so I'm not supposed to do. And the other thing is, I think that people have an advantage of when they're all in the same room, is that you're not looking in a top-down situation. When I'm calling a game, I'm in a press box on the 50-yard overlooking the field, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, what play do I call next, how do I keep this moving along so you're not there for 3 hours or 3.5 hours. Now, look, flow is flow. A great baseball game can take 5.5 hours. The Cardinals certainly did that in Game 6 of the 2011 series. It was one of the most riveting baseball games I've ever sat through, and couldn't believe it was 1 o'clock before the game ended. But if you're sitting there and stopping and starting all the time, like we talked about with modern day football, it's horrific. And why the hell would anyone want to watch it? And so, yeah, once in the same room, and you're trying to, once we figured out how you did things and how you led things, I think it made for a better product because we trusted each other. Doesn't mean that, we got some absolutely trash dice rolls a lot of the time, and that kind of, things go south. But for those of us who are content creators, for every last minute or walk-off home run you got a 13-2 blowout. The game is over in the 4th inning, and you're trying to entertain people for the last 40 minutes. So, yeah.
I still think, because of what YouTubers do, playing Dungeons and Dragons, if you have that interest, if you don't have that interest, then obviously it's
right.
It's not going to be something you're interested in. You're not going to put the desire and the effort into it. But if you have any desire and interest in fantasy and storytelling and characters and medieval times, if you have interest in that and being a YouTuber and telling a story and being involved with characters, it's just a natural extension over to Dungeons and Dragons. And I still think there's a lot of the YouTubers that I go at different channels and I watch, and I say to myself, that person, whether it's a he or she, would be a great role player for a Dungeons and Dragons game. Now, whether or not they're interested in it or not, that's a different story. But just listening to the way they tell a story, and all Dungeons and Dragons is 5 people sitting around a table telling a story. 4 people are telling about what's happening to their character, and the other person is talking about what's going on in the world. That's all Dungeons and Dragons is. Now, there's a lot more intricate part of role playing, which I've did a video series on, and I think that helped you guys by watching these things and understanding more complexity about not thinking about what you know as opposed to what your character knows and stuff like that. But I think the fact that when I'm telling a story, playing a sports game, or when I'm playing, whatever game I'm playing on at the time, and taking that story and converting it over to becoming a Dungeons and Dragons player, like I said, there's many channels out there. And speaking of channels out there, I do want to. We had a couple late arrivals today, but I do want to welcome them. Living My Rhapsody, wonderful, wonderful channel. She does a great job of interviewing all kinds of great YouTubers out there as well. Probably does a 50 times better job than I do. So if I go back and watch how she does things, and if I can just be a tenth as good as her, then I'll be doing good. So big hugs and kisses to Living My Rhapsody. Go check out her channel. And of course, Bleacher Bums Gaming. We are scheduling a time for Anthony from Bleacher Bums Gaming to come and join us. Speaking of which, for you latecomers, tomorrow night, 9 o'clock p.m., CP himself, Mr. Shenanigans, Clinton Parks. Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, David from Baseball Demos are the next 2 that we have scheduled. If you do not have your interview time set up and scheduled, idchesterlive@gmail.com. idjesterlive@gmail.com. Send me an email. We'll schedule a date and a time to get you on. You don't have to be a sports person. We can talk whatever you want to talk about. If you like cats, you like butterflies, it doesn't matter. We just want to learn about you. And that's all we're doing is trying to learn about Ron, what he likes, what he doesn't like, his thoughts, how he views things, how he views himself. And so that's all I'm hoping to do, interview each of you and just I know Al Red Sox fan hasn't sent me one yet. D. Scott Howard, what are we waiting on? There's been a lot of people that have gotten with me, living my Rhapsody. I haven't got your email yet. Sit down, just talk with you, chat about anything that comes up. Just find out more about you. I've already learned a lot about Ron tonight just by listening to him and talking to him, getting his thoughts and opinions and stuff. It's hard to learn about somebody when they're just doing the story about their characters that are going on the screen, and when they're playing their ground ball out to second base, you don't learn a lot about a person. So we're just trying to learn about Ron here. If I missed anybody else that came in, let me know in the chat, and I'll of course introduce them myself. I've been so intrigued talking to Ron, I might have missed somebody, so I apologize for that. Ron, what were we talking about? I can't even remember now. Dungeons and Dragons. That's what we were talking about.
I haven't run out and bought manuals and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, anytime you get to use your imagination, it's a good thing.
I agree.
If you can buy into what it is that you're being asked to use your imagination for, all the better. And it's better than sitting there and dreading things. I mean, I look for, I'll tie it back to my channel. I look forward to all the things that I do. Not everything that I've done on the channel has worked. Not everything that I've done is that I've been real happy with when I've shut off the button. But if you don't try it, you don't know until you try. And I think that goes with the D&D as well. I mean, you're more. I mean, I'm delighted that the channel is at the phase where I'm not amusing myself.
Exactly.
To amuse yourself, but I'm not sitting there on any given afternoon looking at my XSplit going, I wish someone would watch this with me.
Yeah.
And you do, and you try to do it the same way. But yeah, I mean, anytime that someone invites you into, you gotta like what it is. But you got to try it first. I mean, how do you know if you're, until you try? Sometimes you like it, and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, I think you're a perfect example of that, because if I'd have asked you, say, before you had started playing Dungeons and Dragons, hey, Ron, you're going to play Dungeons and Dragons and you're going to love it. No. You probably looked at me like, you're crazy, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Generally, I'm very shy when it comes to those things. I will watch a lot of streams and not say anything. And so, I'll pop in for 5 or 6 minutes, and I'll watch you, and I'll watch Chris, and I'll watch Al, and I won't say hi because, I really don't. I mean, it's always flattering when someone stops and says, Retro Sports Network, great channel, follow Ron. It's great, but it's not why I do this. Right. I mean, I was delighted to do this with you tonight, and, you got to do some self-promotion. But, I kind of like sitting there in the background going, that was great. And then bringing it up in conversation later.
I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons far longer than I will admit. Actually, 1980 was when my first session. I can still remember playing it back then. But the reason I play Dungeons and Dragons, and this kind of goes back to what Ron was talking about, I play Dungeons and Dragons for the moments that I'm going to remember throughout my life. And we actually had one of those moments, one of those iconic moments that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I might not be a YouTuber. I could care less about YouTube. I might not follow anybody on YouTube or anything. And when I sit down and think about what had happened during our session, if it just pops in my mind, there's one iconic moment that happened, and I bet you know what it is.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Why don't you tell everybody?
Chris and his guitar.
Yes.
Singing a song about a departed character who real life intruded on and had to leave before one of the sessions. And so Chris did a video beforehand and played it during the game. And I didn't realize that Chris could sing. I assumed that everyone sings like me and is, that's a hostage situation when you hear me singing. And it was just so heartfelt, not only for the person that we got to know behind the character, but for the genuine loss of that character.
Yes.
And it was, one of those things that it wasn't scripted. I guess he told you in advance that he had done something. And Chris is like a cut up anyway. He'll, he'll show signs and stuff during so I thought it was something along that line. And no, here's this beautiful, heartfelt, original song written and
Quillisim Honey Sting. Quillisim Honey Sting. I can still remember him singing it.
Yeah.
It was, as I mentioned, it's not so much that I love fantasy, I love magic, I love wizards or anything like that. What I love is the story and the memories that you make with the people that have these stories. And like I said, 15 years from now, I might not even remember the characters' names. I might not remember what happened in the adventure, but I'm going to remember that memory that Chris made for me, that Chris made for everyone. And that's why I play the game. I don't play the game because, it's fantasy and I love fantasy, and I don't play the game because it's all magic. I play the game because I want to have those memories. I want to remember those moments. I'm sure there's things that happen in everyone's lives that is an iconic moment. Each of us have their own desires and thoughts about what's important to them. And that for me is going to stand out probably until I die. I'm going to remember that moment. And it was just four random guys on the internet that got together and played Dungeons and Dragons. And now I've got this memory that's been made. And that to me is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the things that you don't expect, I think, that stick with you. All of us who are in the sports content creating community do championships and all that. I mean, that's what drives everything there. But it's those little moments, the ones that come from nowhere. It's the jokes. There was the Bubba Husky is the reason why I can't have the chat on the screen during the game, because we got talking about pubic hair wigs one day during the football game. And I'm losing it laughing, and it's like, okay, we're supposed to keep this. It's I have a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old cousin who will pop up on my stream every once in a while, and it looks like, okay, what's his problem? And just those little interactions of moments, like what we're talking about. It's not necessarily the game itself, even though I will never forget that you don't run a pitch left when you're down at the goal line with 4 seconds left to go in a tie game.
Well, I don't know. Ask Pete Carroll about that.
Yeah. Well, I had the Kansas City Denver game, which I'll never forget as long as I live, with Kansas City's backup quarterback, and they were going to lose if that game went into overtime. And so in that 5 seconds of decision going, okay, if I run a pitch left to their running back, there's a 0.4 chance that that's a touchdown. And so I gambled. And so instead, Tom Jackson tackled said running back in the end zone, and Denver won on a walk-off safety. And, I didn't sound like Keith Jackson at that particular moment. Those are the things. Like you said, it's the ones that you don't expect. In real life, when my dad passed away, big Buffalo Bills fan since conception, since 1960. Damn it, I'd give one of those World Series away to have him see one of those Super Bowls turn out right. But you can't change that now. We did the funeral here, but what not a life service, but life remember, positive thing. Mm-hmm. Where his band got back together, all sorts of things. And my uncle turned to us at one point, my mother's younger brother, and said, "This has been the best, worst day of my life." And that will stick with me for that reason, because you didn't know what to expect on any given day, what can happen. And here's this thing that we've all shared, And one last time that we sat there and remembered him as a unit, and it was a terrible day. You're saying goodbye to your father, but you're going to remember it for all the right reasons. And so, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the memories that make up your life that matter. So, anyways, guys, we're going to open it up to the chat. If anyone has any questions that I haven't asked Ron and you're interested, go ahead and type it in the chat here, and let's see if anyone has anything for Ron, and then we're going to call it a night. But open it up to question for Ron here. This is, of course, from Mr. Ballard himself, Honey Sim, Quisim Honey Sting, Mr. Ballard Man Stratomatic Doer. He says, what is the most memorable, good or bad, piece of reporting that you had ever written? So that's kind of and I hadn't gotten into that, and I didn't know if you wanted to get into it or not, but you were an actual paid sports reporter.
Yes. And now I do PR, which is great. I had the task I asked for and was able to after the marathon bombings. The live blogging I did for Bleacher Report was so well received that we continued it to start the next year. And so that first Red Sox game after the bombing, the Friday night game was canceled because they were chasing around the Zarnoff brother in water temple. So no one was able to get out. So the first game back was that Saturday. It was against Kansas City, as a matter of fact. And so I asked to do the live blog and was told I could do it. And so going through, when you report, and we've alluded to it in my game calling, I try to keep it neutral. I mean, some things obviously, you can't. But at the end of the day, I don't care who wins or loses. I hope that people are entertained, and that was the same with my writing. And so I'm sitting there watching the ceremony and crying and trying to write about it because, look, Boston is, we all grew up with it. And so I'm watching the David Ortiz, this is our effing city thing, and going, did he really say that? Anyway, at one point, CNN Breaking News retweeted my blog, and 60,000 people read it. And so for me, I don't want to dwell on the crap pieces that I've written. I can go through some of those too, but to say something that was to do that for my team growing up and for a region that badly needed a hug, I think that was the highlight of my writing.
Absolutely. Speaking of our Ballard to our great friend Quisim Honeysting, we actually have the D&D player who actually played in the game. Dylan Do in the chat. My friend Dylan, how are you? It's so good to see you. Glad you're still around. We do appreciate you stopping in, and if definitely go back and watch this because we actually spent a few minutes talking about Quisim Honeysting and Chris's Ballards to you, and the just the importance and the moment that it created for us in our D&D session. So welcome, Dylan Do. So good to see you here. Another question here. This one is for Beecher Bums Gaming again. We are going to be having Beecher Bums Gaming, and I can't wait to talk to him as well about his game creations. But we're just trying to finalize a date and a time for him. His question is, if you could go back, Ron, to any year in baseball history to watch a game, what year and why would you do that?
That's a good question because I've watched a lot of baseball history. One of my earliest memories is Aaron breaking Ruth's record in '74. Gosh, that's a great question. 78 is a year I always fall back to, but knowing how it ends, I'm not sure how much I'd enjoy it. I guess maybe 46, right after the war. All those DiMaggio, Williams, Feller coming back in tip-top shape. There was some great races in the National League. The Red Sox win the American League going away. I think that was probably their best team until this past year. I guess that, day games and that, because like I said, the years that I replay the most are the ones that I already remember. And you can't go back and change anything. If you could go back and change anything, I'm locking John McNamara in the clubhouse at the in the ninth inning of Game 6 of the '86 series. But as far as taking an era where I know some of the players, I guess it would be any war of those first 4 or 5 years after the war.
All right, we got another question here for you. This one is from CP, Mr. Shenanigans himself. Mr. Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, be sure to tune in. There are going to be shenanigans aplenty. Clinton Parks, what was the, let me make sure I asked the question correctly. What was the first game you ever remember watching? What was the first baseball game you ever remember
The
watching?
Aaron game in '74. I was 2.
2 years old?
Yeah.
And you remembered what the hell happened?
Well, I told you that there was nothing off limits. If you wanted to ask about certain things, you could. Because I could not walk around, and I couldn't touch my toes and all that, I could talk at 6 months. And I could read at 18 months.
Really?
Yes. And so once you start to Sports Illustrated, it's wonderful. And I'm not even talking about the swimsuit issue. Once you're able to put those cognitive things together, you start to remember things. And so, yes, I remember being 2. Yeah, I was born in November '71. This was April of '74. And that's my first solid baseball memory, was watching Aaron do that. Aaron break Bruce's record. And I had some sort, obviously not a full concept about the, black man getting a standing ovation in the South type deal, but I knew it was a big deal.
Wow. That is amazing, because I can't remember like 5 years ago, let alone back when I was 2 years old. Any other any other questions we have for Ron out there? Be sure to type them in the chat.
Clinton asked what a catamount was. I'll kill some time with that while people think about if they want to ask anything. And a catamount is a very rare version of a bobcat that is found in the woods, primarily in Maine, but also New Hampshire and Vermont. And if you find one in Vermont, I think they found one for the first time in 40 years. And so that's why the teams are named the Catamounts. And so, yeah, they're kind of an offshoot of a bobcat.
Wow.
Anything else? If Ron were to say November
we do have Beatles Eternally that I noticed he had just arrived here. So hello to Beatles Eternally.
If Ron were to say November 9th, that would be blown over.
So this is a good question, and I'll probably ask baseball demos on Saturday at 3 o'clock. Baseball demos Saturday at 3 o'clock. I'm going to ask you this question first. I'm going to ask it to him on Saturday. I don't know if I told you what time it was. DH, yes or no?
Yes. Yes. David Ortiz is my favorite player. Only because the only 2 leagues that they do not use a DH now are the National League and one of the Japanese leagues. Even one, they use it, one in Japan and the DH, and of course the American League. Pitchers don't even hit now until they reach AA, and they only hit in games where they play other National League teams. So let's say if you had Portland and just give me another, what's Tampa's AA team?
No idea.
Okay, so if you let's say if the Astros and Nationals AA teams met, and I'm not sure if it's possible or not, because the Astros are an American League team, you would use a DH. But if the Nationals played the Cubs AA team or AAA team, you'd have the pitchers hit. So pitchers aren't good hitters because they don't get enough experience doing it. Make it equal.
Okay. Here is my reply to that, and I respect Ron. Yeah. I respect you, and I respect everything you say. Okay,
and I covered National Ball.
Here's the caveat to that.
Yeah,
the caveat to that is they don't do it because only half the pitchers can even bat in Major League Baseball. You get rid of the DH, all these pitchers growing up, all of a sudden they got to learn how to become a batter because when they get up to the big leagues, they're going to have to hit. Nobody concentrates on it now because, okay, well, let's say I go to a National League team, I might get 1 or 2 bats every so often when I'm a starter pitcher. If I'm a relief pitcher, I'll never get one.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about that. The only people that ever bat are the starting pitchers. If they're having a really good game and they go in the 6th inning, I might get 2 at bats. So why should I concentrate on that? You change the rule and say, okay, now MLB, we're going to get rid of the DH. Then all of a sudden, pitchers are going to have to learn how to hit, and they're going to become a more vital part to the team because they have to learn how to hit. And the pitchers that can hit all of a sudden are going to be more valuable than the ones that can't hit.
Oh, I hear you. No, and I absolutely agree. I don't disagree with it, but the American League is never going back.
Well, if I become commissioner, it will go back. First thing I will do, because I find that I've done lots of replays for National League. I've done lots of replays for American League. In the American League, tell me if I'm wrong, you put the next 9 players out there, and the only time you substitute is if you have a slow batter that gets on first base in the bottom of the 9th inning and you're down by a run and you need to put a pinch runner in. Or you got a bad defender out there and you substitute for a better defender when you're up by a run or 2 in the 8th or 9th inning. That's the only time I ever see anybody changing in the American League, which takes all the strategy out of baseball. There's no strategy.
Oh, they're definitely 2 different games, and I learned to love the double switch. The double switch I think is you can't do that in the American League. Well, you can, but it's really a pain in the ass to do. No, I hear you. I absolutely hear you. But no, I grew to love the DH because primarily I watched American League baseball growing up, and so I think if you're a Cardinal fan, and if those of you out there watch the Braves or the Pirates or whatever, you get used to your style of baseball. I wish there was more distinction between the leagues, to be honest.
I think they should come up with a compromise. Okay? Because I agree with you, American League players, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse in baseball than having a pitcher that can't bat. He knows he can't bat. There's 2 outs in the inning, and he can't bunt, so he's got to swing. He looks at 2 balls that come in, doesn't even bother to swing at them. And the 3rd ball, which is usually out of the zone, he swings at because he knows he's going to strike out anyways.
And
there's nothing worse in baseball than there's a pitcher going up there and he's got no shot at getting a hit. Okay, so I agree with the American leaguers on that. But there's got to be some kind of compromise where you put some strategy back in the game without making maybe the pitchers bad. If they could come up with some kind of compromise, I've got some ideas on that, but they're too lengthy to go into right now. But maybe you have like a rotational player that every inning you have to rotate your lineup. You have, instead of 9 players, you have 10, okay? And then you only have to put 9 on the field, obviously. But the next inning, that player that's sent out has to go somewhere into the lineup, and that player's out. And you have to basically rotate each player in and out each inning, maybe as some kind of a compromise where you have kind of that DH ability because you're rotating the players in and out, but you also don't have this lame-o pitcher up that can't hit anything.
You do, a lot of people forget that the DH can be used for any fielder. It does not need to be used for the pitcher. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I mean, so if you were stuck with the Orioles and Mark Belanger, you didn't have to hit him.
Well, I know Wainwright came in and, because I follow the Cardinals, I know Wainwright came in 2016 and pinch hit because he was like, the bench players were worse than Waino. So, he came in and got a pinch hit opportunity. So there are, if you look at Bumgarner, I
Oh,
think it
he can hit.
was the 2017 first game of the season. He hit 2 home runs.
Yeah,
Against
Strasburg and Scherzer can hit too. But
yeah.
my favorite pitcher hitting moment, I think, of all time was Bartolo Colon taking one of the San Diego pitchers deep a few years ago. Bartolo Colon is, fat and can't run, but he hit a home run.
Yeah, so I mean there are batters, but like you said, I agree with you. Batters or pitchers don't focus on their batting ability because they may or may not need it. You know, if they're only going to be a starting pitcher, then yes, they got to learn how to do it. So then they're going to have to spend time in the batting cage. The other pitchers, I don't ever see them, swinging the bats or doing anything. So it's kind of lame. But I think, when I'm doing my national replays, it forces you to think and go, okay, pitchers due up third, so I need to get them through this inning. So when
Right?
it,
Oh, absolutely.
you know what I'm saying? And it forces the manager, okay, we got 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th inning. We're down by a run. We have a man on second base, and the pitcher's coming up. Well, I don't care how good he's pitching. I'm taking him out and replacing him for, a pinch hitter because I'll have a much better chance of tying the game right then and there.
Yeah.
And I've got 12 pitchers in my bullpen that I can call on. So, all right. Any other questions for our good friend, Mr. Ron Juckett? And
Someone
see,
asked me 3 players I would take in
oh
baseball.
yeah. I was gonna say that. I think it was Bleacher Bums Gaming had
Is
asked
that all time or today?
if you're going to start a brand new baseball team,
Okay.
what would be the first 3 players that you take? Who would they be? Like 2019, we got the Vermont, wherever you live, the Vermont water buffalo.
We made the Vermont Lake Monsters a
The
big
Vermont water buffaloes are starting up. They're in the American League. You got
You're
3
a
players. Who you
Flintstones
take?
fan, weren't you? Mookie Betts, Max Scherzer. Wow, and I guess I'd have to take an infielder. Jose Altuve.
These are 3 really good players.
I think they play the game the right way. As I said earlier, watching Scherzer go every 5th day was a treat. Those were not nights that you felt like you were working. Mookie Betts is a 5-tool threat, and God, I love watching Jose Altuve play.
He's fun. He's fun because you know why? Because he puts effort into everything he does. Everything, whether it's running the bases on a ground out or trying to make it from first to second on a pop fly into center field. He puts effort in everything he does. That's what I like. Speaking of which, if you were starting that team up, I noticed you didn't mention Manny Machado or Bryce Harper in either one of your picks. So
No,
I'm taking it you're not a fan of those 2,
well,
especially with them trying to get their big contract this year.
let me break those down into separate things. I think Machado's a punk. He can play well, but he's a punk. I don't like his attitude. Harper, after being around that team for a couple years, I never could understand if Bryce Harper was playing for the Washington Nationals or for Scott Boras.
Yeah.
And even though, yes, there are other Boras clients. I mean, I love Anthony Rendon, and he's a Boras client. I don't think Harper is as good as he thinks he is. I'm sure I think he'll either sign with Washington or Philadelphia. He's not a bad guy to have on your team. I don't think, like Machado, I don't think Harper is disruptive. He's about as spontaneous as oatmeal. But that team went to the playoffs 4 times in 7 years and never got out of the league divisional series.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. I think Machado, if you look back at his history, he's had numerous problems. Numerous problems. He had a game against Oakland where he was running from second to third, ground ball to the third baseman. I think it was Donaldson at the time, and he ended up hitting Machado in the chest with the glove. He wanted to start a big to do over that.
Right.
The guy tagging him out with a glove in his chest. The fact that he doesn't run out his ground balls, he's got a bad attitude over the game. After the game, I would not take Machado. You couldn't pay me to take Machado.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I think he's a cancer to the players and the teams he's on. I'm glad he's leaving the Orioles or left the Orioles and won't come back. And I pity the team that gets him. I really hope St. Louis. I have not heard any talk about St. Louis getting him, so I'm very happy for that because I do not want him on my team. Harper, I think, is got just a big head, like you said. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's a great player.
Yeah.
He doesn't take the leadership role that he needs to do to become a great player. And that's why I don't think Washington's made it out of the freaking first round of the playoffs. He's waiting for someone else to take over the team instead of him guiding everyone else. And you don't do that as a superstar. As a superstar, I can't imagine Reggie Jackson. Since I watched the replay today, we'll talk about Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson sitting in the dugout, not saying a word when his team's down and nobody's hustling and doing the right thing. I can't imagine Reggie not saying anything.
Reggie Jackson was the ultimate hot dog, but he was a Nathan's. He backed it up.
Exactly.
Someone in the chat, I think it was Bleacher Bums, why didn't we mention Trout? I think Betts is a better defender than Trout. Trout's probably the best offensive player in the game, but I think Betts has more tools, if that makes any sense. And Betts is a couple years younger. I have nothing against Mike Trout at all. But if I was to start a team, I would go with Betts over Trout. If I was trying to win a World Series, I would do what I could if Trout was available to get him. But
I think Trout would put more butts in the seats too. So if I was starting a team, Trout might be pretty high on my list.
Yeah,
although when you're starting a team, Trout's going to cost you a lot of money, and
right.
probably double what Mookie Betts would cost you as well.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I have enjoyed. I don't even believe it's been an hour and 45 minutes. I have enjoyed just sitting down, talking with Ron, just about anything and everything. And I appreciate him coming on. I appreciate all of our viewers tonight that came by and all the people that had asked questions. I had a great time, guys. Really, to be honest, I just want to find out more about Ron. I would like to. I could go another hour because there's more questions I would like to have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Ron, you can come back when we get when we get through the first round of people. And I don't have anybody scheduled. I'd like to have you come back because there's some things I'd like to talk to you about your disability.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that this late. We've already been done.
I don't want it to. I don't want to.
You're not going to ask the wrong question if that's what you're worried about.
That's what I'm worried about.
You're not going to ask the wrong
question. I know you are super cool about that, but I just I don't want to ignore it like it's not there, but I also don't want to. I want people to see you more as you, and not that you have a disability, and that's
I'll just leave it at this: I've never been able to hide it. And so it comes front and center, and so it's best because it's a birth defect, and we can talk about this because I do want to be on with you again. Because it's a birth defect and not something that I acquired, there's a whole different mindset there. And so I don't mind talking about it, but I don't want it to define who I am.
Yeah, I'd also like to find out more about the Boston. And you became a sports reporter because you were actually reporting on the Boston marathon bombers, correct?
No, I became a reporter. I was that's a whole long story into itself.
Yeah, that's why I would like to, have you back on because I know there's more to you, Ron, and I just that's why I want to have these interviews with people because I know there's every one of us out there has got a story. We've got more to us than hey, look, it's a ground ball to second, or hey, look, it's a double play or whatever. There's a lot more to every one of us, and I'm just trying to get a hold of and find those special things and let everyone else know, because I knew you were a sports reporter, had worked in that business
Right.
just from hearing you talk with other people or during your live streams and stuff. But there's a lot of people that probably come to your channel that never knew that at all. And now, if they hopefully, if they watch this video on YouTube or if they've been in the chat, they now realize that, and they might say to themselves, "Wow,
Scared the
Ron
daylights out
Tucker
of
was a
Al when
sports reporter."
I scared the daylights out of Al and dropped an F bomb on one of his chats with Al.
Holy cow!
Yep.
So, anyways, appreciate you coming on
My
one
pleasure.
more time, just to let everybody remember tomorrow night, Mr. Shenanigans himself, Clinton Parks, 9 p.m. We're going to start at 9
Ask him
p.m.
about the hockey game he helped design.
I'm sorry?
Ask him about the hockey game he helped design.
Oh, that's a good question. The hockey game. So, Clinton Parks tomorrow, 9 o'clock, and then baseball demo Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're still scheduling with BBG, Anthony from Bleacher Bums Gaming. We're going to get a definitive time and date with him. Stratomatic Delaware, February 11th, time to be determined. If you have not scheduled an interview time with me, I'm going to get out my 3D super cool thing one more time. My special graphic, my graphic budget is through the roof. idjesterlive@gmail.com.
You stole Chris' thunder,
idjesterlive.
didn't you?
Send me an email. We'll set up a time. You do not have to be a sports guy. All you have to do is be a YouTuber in our great community and have something to share with everyone else. And I know there's a lot of you out there that I would love to talk with. There's lots of questions I have of all of you. So appreciate everyone that showed up tonight, and a big thank you for Mr. Retro Sports Network. Check out his channel. Great guy. We sat down. It's been an hour and 50 minutes already, and it's gone by in like 30 minutes. I swear to God, it's been wonderful. He's a great guy to talk to. He does a great job on his channel, and he always steps up to the plate. He stepped up for Dungeons and Dragons when we needed someone. When I make a call out, I can guarantee if I put a video out tonight, hey, I need somebody to do something for me, I know Ron Juck will email me, and that's the kind of guy he is. So you guys definitely support him and his channel, and I just appreciate him so much. So all the stuff he does. So thanks for coming on, and thanks everyone for coming out tonight. Stratomatic Delaware, D. Scott Howard, Al Red Sox fan, Beatles Eternally, Bleacher Bums Gaming. Make sure you give me that email so we can finalize your time and date for your interview. Clinton Parks, of course, Living My Rhapsody, just everyone that came out tonight. There was quite a few wonderful YouTube channels on here. Hopefully you guys can come by tomorrow night, 9 o'clock. Until then, thank you all. We'll see you guys next time on Quick Chat with ID Jester. See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.